It's great to be with you, our listeners. Thank you for taking time to join us again for what promises to be a superb episode. I had the pleasure of talking with this physician for half an hour before our call, and we've got a gem today. I cannot wait. A lot of times people talk about physician wellness and retention, and they speak, but they don't speak with a background of medicine a lot of times. They may be experts, but they're no longer practicing. Our guest today goes on both sides of the fence. She's asked to consult with many large healthcare organizations, and at the same time, she's still seeing patients, which, in my view, just kicks the credibility right upstairs. So, Dr. Judy Wright, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Carl.
So, I'm just going to turn the time over to you for a moment. Tell us about your path, what brought you into medicine, what you've done in medicine, and what brings you to us today.
I was one of those weird children that knew that they wanted to be in medicine because they liked going to the doctor, even if it meant getting shots. I just liked being around the physicians and the nurses and everybody that worked together to take care of the community. I definitely grew up with a family physician, even though I didn't think I was going to become one. I grew up with a family physician, so that physician knew our family well, knew the dynamics and what's now called social determinants of health. They weren't really talking about it. You just had the family doctor that knew the dynamics of your family, knew if there were some hardships going on, things of that nature, knew the dynamics of the community and the neighborhood and how that could affect you as well. And I just loved that. So I knew like at 8 years old that that I wanted to be a doctor. And that's the trajectory I went on to become. And once I really decided to do family medicine because I don't like being bored. And can, you literally could go from room to room and it'd be like such a different patient. I mean, every patient is different, but to know you could go from one room and it would be a prenatal patient to another room where it was an elderly male to another room where it was, a baby or a teenager. Like you just, didn't know until you picked up the chart who were you about to see next. So because I didn't like being bored, that's how I picked family medicine. And it went right into, I would say, Carl, me being a sociology major in college, because that was the other thing. Everybody was like, sociology major. You're not going to be a biology major or biochemistry major? Nope. I took one sociology course and I was hooked. And I was just like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna be a sociology major.
So, I'm guessing here because we didn't talk about this on the pre-call, but one of the things that it really resonated with me was your comment about how emotional intelligence transforms healthcare retention.
Yes.
And so from this must be right up your alley as a sociologist with emotional intelligence. Dig into that for us. And remember, the purpose of our episodes are to help that leader on the way to work or on the exercise bike think, okay, I can use this today. So
Yeah.
tell us about that statement that emotional intelligence can actually help retention. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence actually helps retention when you have emotional intelligence, it can increase your retention by 30%. And emotional intelligence goes hand in hand with patient care because it enhances patient safety, right? And some of the best way to get to be able to enhance that is to gain their trust, is to build that rapport, right? Um, and so when you want to build that kind of rapport, you have to have that type of emotional intelligence. They need to be able to feel comfortable with you. They need to be able to feel comfortable with the environment that they're in, right? So when you're talking emotional intelligence, it's not just of the one person. I mean, that one person is great. They're having it with their doctor is great. But remember, they don't come in and see the doctor first thing. They have to go through, if it's a clinic, they're going through the registrar, they're going through the medical assistant, they're going through the nurse. So when everybody can encompass that, right? Then that is how you best help the patient. But it also is how you best help everybody involved, the staff, you know, and it makes it be a place where you want to come and work. When you have that, you have the retention there, you have that build up, that history. That's where you start to gain the trust of the community. And so when as a sociologist, that's what I learned about. I learned about group dynamics and the community dynamics. And that's basically what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to say, when I was growing up, I was lucky enough that my doctor looked like me, but a lot of the doctors didn't. And so when they didn't have that emotional intelligence, it was very hard for them to, in a Caribbean area, to gain the trust or to even understand, because then there's that whole cultural thing, right? And cultural competency. It starts to link together, Carl. It really starts to link together, right?
And that's where I want you to dig in even further.
Yeah.
Because sadly, and I'm sure you've run across them in your consulting work, of the pseudo believers, I'll call them, the ones that, oh, absolutely, we believe in emotional intelligence, we believe it's important. But if it comes up that if it's a business imperative versus emotional intelligence, then not so much with the emotional intelligence, but we really need you to deliver here. We need you to retain. We need you. So it's, yes, I like emotional intelligence until it costs me money, and then not so much. Can
Yeah.
you talk to that person for me?
The best way for me to say it is you're not fooling anybody, honestly. When it's just something a box you're checking off, people can tell. The people that work with you can tell, because it's usually the first. There's no thought. There's really no thought to it. It's the first thing to go when we're not having a discussion about it. It's just gone, because we have to make money. You guys are going to have to do more, stay longer, do this, do that. And and they're not getting fueled. They're not getting what they need either, right? They're not getting appreciated. They don't feel protected. They don't feel safe. They don't feel, loyalty goes both ways. They don't feel that. They feel at any time, everything could fall apart. They could lose their job. They could, so yeah, you're not fooling anybody. It's really important if you want to retain people, because people most often leave their leaders and their managers, right? They don't just leave the job. They leave their leaders and their managers, and they find a job somewhere else in different forms. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Um, Anything else? So I've also heard, because I do a lot of coaching and my coaching is focused, I use an emotional intelligence framework. And it's so helpful for people because a lot of times they hear this fuzzy term. But I also hear from senior leaders that, again, it's kind of a secondary response here, doctor. Carl, we're going to ask you to coach, but underneath, we really don't believe that emotional intelligence can be taught. Your thought on that?
Yeah. If your leaders don't believe it, right? You really need to get buy-in. And Carl, it's almost like, and you must feel it sometimes, it's like, then why am I here? Because if the leaders don't have buy-in, again, you're not fooling anybody, right? You're checking off a box. If you don't believe it can be taught, then what are we doing? Right? So until they really buy in, and they themselves because they don't believe it. They're not picking up anything you're saying either. And they themselves start to pick it up and start to model it for others, then it's
Mhm.
going nowhere. But good on you. You just spent some money, right, to check off a box, because that's essentially what it is. You know, it's not fuzzy. It's emotional intelligence is a real deal. And you know, Carl, one of the things that's so sad for me is it's not just in healthcare, it's in other places too, where people don't feel like, even in the schools, they're trying to teach, but some people are like, what's that for? You know, just do like math and reading and whatever, right? So the best place to start teaching that is when you're young, so that when you're coming up, you already have some foundation to it. But, and this is not to bash any healthcare worker, and I'm going to speak from physician's space because I'm a physician. We haven't been taught that. We really have.
What did you
We haven't been taught, or at least we weren't. I think some medical schools do try to teach it now, but we weren't taught emotional intelligence. In fact, we were, without saying out loud, taught to be stoic, right? Because we're in a high stress environment where things, very emotional things can happen. And the way you have to get through your day, your shift, the next day, your week, is to understand that that just happened and move on. You have the next patient to take care of and the next patient to take care of. So without saying be stoic, it's literally what we were taught to do, right?
Mhm.
So in that way, I'm not saying people should pity us, but just understand that it was almost like a survival tactic to get through and continue to help everyone.
So this is a problem that I'm running into a lot, and I just like to run it by you.
Mhm.
I do deal a lot with surgeons, and I see repeatedly. Now, I need to put in context. I know that there are some surgeons out there that truly were trained in the old school of yell
Mhm.
and scream, I'll get what I want, captain of the ship, etc. I know they exist. So I
Yeah,
just want to get that out there that I'm not naive there.
yeah.
I'm also seeing an increase somewhere. Every organization seems to have a different name for them, but they're the quality reports that someone can fill out when they feel like a situation is unsafe or that patient safety was in jeopardy, etc. What I'm seeing though is where Dr. Jane Doe, great surgeon, she's nationally renowned, literally, changing some of the information, but she used real story. She used a harsh tone of voice in the OR, and the something went wrong. The patient was decompensating, and so she said in a rather firm voice, "I need that retractor now."
Okay.
And she was written up for that because the person that heard that felt that she had been disrespected because of the voice tone. How do you work with something like that? How would you approach that as a consultant?
Ooh, yeah. So that's a tough one. And I will say this. Yes, you're seeing more of that. We're in a different space now where everything is up for debate. Um, and a lot of things can be cast. It's all narrative, right? It's how it's cast. This is why it's even more important. I'm not saying don't be authentic. That's not what I'm saying. But it's even more important. You're building a brand, and if your brand is that you're a harsh person, they are more apt to believe the person that just wrote you up for the simplest of things. You're trying to save a life. Of course, you're going to be very more direct. I'm not I I'm not the she that's not me, right? So right, but you're going to be more direct because in that moment what's important to you is saving this person, right? But I will say this, if you've built a reputation already, that person can hear everything you say as harsh because you've built that reputation. When you have not built that reputation, when your reputation is on the other side, okay, and that person tries to do that, yeah, you may get called in, you may get asked a bunch of questions, but people are more apt to say that doesn't even sound like that person. And they're going to dig a little deeper to make sure because they want to, they don't, they're more likely not to believe that, and they will do the investigation. But when this is when your attitude tends to walk in the room before you do, when that's your reputation, it's rough.
Okay, so to our listeners, just a moment. I do this on a semi-regular basis, but if you're listening to this and multitasking, like many of us do with podcasts, you're driving, you're on the uh, exercise bike. Please, let's see, what's our time here? About 20 minutes into this podcast, you need to rewind and reverse and listen to what Dr. Wright just said. That is so important. When your attitude walks in the room before you do, you've got a problem. That is so well said. So let me change tracks a little here. We also talked about in our pre-call, and I say that so often, I'm going to have listeners say, "Why don't you record the pre-call so we can also get that?" But
It was a good pre-call.
it was. You talked about that the traditional leadership models are failing. And I want you to dig in on that a little because you know as well as I do that our habits run strong. And if I've been using one model for decades, I may not admit it, but my fingers go pretty tight around that little model. So since they are struggling, give us some thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the truth is that traditionally, leaders were supposed to be super strong, and there was a way that was seen, right? You ruled with, if not an iron fist, you know, a very solid one. And so and it was, we tell you we tell you what to do, and it gets done. That's not what's happening here. That doesn't really work, and this is how you lose people. If people don't feel respected, if people don't feel safe, if people don't if people want to be led, but they also want a feeling of autonomy. They want to feel like you trust them and they can trust you. And when they don't feel that way because all you know how to do is, maybe not technically, but bark out orders, and it must be done, and you're not really listening to your people at all, it doesn't work. But the part that people don't talk about is that's stressful for the leader too. That's stressful for the leader too, right? Because you
What do you
don't
mean?
you don't have that connection. You're
Okay.
too busy being the person that does the orders, but you don't have that connection. And now you can't, maybe you can, but some people can't understand why people are leaving. They can't see clear that they may have a hand in that. They can't see clear that you're the one that they're leaving. Leaders, and I think as it changed, as it's ever changing, it needs to be continuous, like continual education. Leaders need leadership training, and they don't need leadership training just when they become that title. It needs to be ongoing, right?
Mhm.
How best do I not just lead those who, my team members, but assist them to be better, team members. Assist them even to grow, to rise, to be promoted. How do I do that? How do I recognize things in my team members? How do I recognize their strengths and
Mhm.
maximize on their strengths rather than just, I need a body to do this, so you're going to do it, right?
Mhm.
Because that's not helpful to that team member or to you. That's not going to be successful.
So, just a hypothetical here. I've been raised in a certain type of leadership. Sociologically, back then it worked. What steps should I take? Because I hear people all around telling me, you need to, times are changing. Steps that our listeners can use to say, okay, I need to put some new habits in place as a leader. Because it's convenient to say, you do this, you do this, you do this. But this trust piece can kind of seem kind of warm, fuzzy, nebulous. How do I grab that one? Thoughts?
A lot of people will what they call warm, fuzzy, nebulous, and it can feel like that to them. But what it often is I don't want to dedicate that time to that. I'm busy. You're telling me to change. I've been this way for 30, 40, 50 years. And do you know what it would take to form a new habit and learn a new way? And so what it becomes is everybody needs to formulate around me. Okay. Everybody needs to formulate around me, but that's not how it works because now you've been retained, but everybody else is leaving, or you're still not getting necessarily the result that you set out to get. It takes a mindset shift, Carl, and a willingness to say, I may not think that it's me, but I'm going to sit down and try to keep an open mind. One of the things with coaches is coaches will tell you if it doesn't make any sense for me to work with somebody that's not coachable.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It just doesn't make any sense for me to work with somebody that's not coachable. So if having an open mind, right? And think of all the things that you might already have an open mind to and say, okay, I'm going to address this, right? And it may take me a little bit longer, but I'm going to address this the way I would have an open mind to that.
So I want to jump on something you just said, because I know there are people in our listening audience that are struggling with this right now. How do you, so Dr. Judy Wright's brought in, she's national class expert, she knows her stuff, and she's sitting down with Dr. Jane Doe, renowned surgeon. And it takes Dr. Judy Wright about 30 seconds to figure out that Jane Doe would rather that you're not in the room.
Right.
So, how do you address senior leadership has brought in this national class expert? You're sitting there and you're thinking, I may be national class, but this person does not want to be coached. How do you tell them that? And how do you bring that up to the person that not so much? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so it really becomes about because I don't like to make assumptions. So it really becomes about seeing how they interact. I may be asking them questions to see how they interact. The other thing is I don't tend to do that on a first go, right? Because I myself, I could be introverted. I myself may look at somebody and say, "Man, that person's a bit too up there and too much for me. Like that's too much." And by the second or third time I may be around the person, I'm like, "Okay, sometimes it takes I don't know if this works, but I'm willing to listen to you because, by the second or third time. But if
Mhm.
I'm asking questions, if you're being negative constantly, just consistent negativity, there comes a point where you have to be willing to say, I don't think that this is going to work because this person is not yet open to it working. I don't call anybody a lost cause, but this person's not yet open to it working.
So I'll play the role just in this hypothetical. I'm the senior leader. I brought you in, and you sit down with me and say, Carl, Dr. Jane here, I don't think she's there yet. So, my next question to you, what can I do, Dr. Wright, to help her get there?
Yeah. So here's the thing, you can't strong arm her into getting there, right? Is it one of the things on my end that I would do is I'd actually sit down with her. If I get the opportunity, I'd actually sit down with her. It's not a group thing and just see where her head is, right? But also that leader can also sit with her. Again, we cast great shadows. If the leaders are doing it, you're more likely to say, well, they're not asking me to do something that they're not doing.
Yeah.
All right. So as the leader that goes there, if you go there and say, well, now we have everybody doing it, so you just do it, so you have to do it too. Yeah, that's not going to get buy-in. They'll sit there because you said it, but that's not going to get buy-in from them, right?
Mm,
But if you explain, and that's why I like the idea of you know, bringing people in, not just for that one person sometimes, although that may be the catalyst.
mm,
Okay, but bringing people in for the team, at least at first, so that there's a whole team buy-in. We're trying to teach everybody about emotional intelligence and how that helps your colleagues, how that helps your staff, how that helps the patients, right?
mm,
um, because everybody is working together. And ultimately, that's what this is. When we talk about things like medical homes, what's a home? We're really talking about working together, and that's very hard to work together when you don't feel safe. The person that wrote up the doctor for something that probably wasn't a big deal, that
mhm,
person may not have felt safe
mm,
with this doctor because of previous stuff. People want to feel safe. They want to feel job safety, financial safety, physical safety. Look, I remember training, and it didn't happen around me, but there was one doctor. He was a pediatric surgeon. And he was excellent, just excellent at what he did. People told me he would take things and throw them across the room, and I'm like scalpels. I like you know? And so I was a little on edge when I had to rotate with him. I guess there was something about my personality. I never had a problem with him, but I believed everybody because they told me he would just take things, heavy things, scalpels, and fling them. He'd get so upset. And it's
mhm.
like, no, they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
They don't feel psychologically safe. So we have to lead by example. And when you have someone that is diehard, nope, sometimes that's what it takes. You might need to put your foot in there too and say, hey, let's all do it together, you know?
So, riding along on that example, let's say that there's someone on the clinic staff or the surgery staff that you know as a leader, you've observed them, and they just seem to walk in the room wanting to be offended. And they have no qualms in taking down somebody, even though everyone around them, and I've had situations like this where I interview staff and it's, oh, Dr. Jones, there's about 90% that feels safe and the 10% that don't. But the 10%, no one pulls them aside and helps them with how to manage conflict or how to manage difficult situations. They're just allowed to write somebody up and they don't have to take accountability for their behavior. Any thoughts on that with all your experience of how to help someone be able to be more resilient, not to be truly unsafe, but they just need to develop some resilience. Thoughts on that, or am I off base?
No, I don't think you're off base because I have feelings about that even in the realm of a lot of things that you can get written up for. Um, and while I don't have a direct prescription, I do feel that what's happening is that people are trying to be careful because they're trying not to take away and minimize how people feel, and I get that, right? But similar to how now we have, and this is going to seem a little off base, but follow me here. Now we have urgent cares, right? It used to be that you just had like emergency rooms, but now you have urgent cares. And then, so then there was a mission to kind of teach people to know the difference between going to what urgent meant and what emergent meant. Similarly, I think there needs to be a concerted effort to kind of triage out what
Mhm.
is a, yes, you may have felt a certain way, okay, but was that really something that was something that needed to be written up
Mhm.
versus you absolutely need to write that up. Similarly, the people who are to review it
Mhm.
also need to be able to triage, right? Um, Triage and really filter out. Let's dig down into this, right? Because I don't want to minimize it and make you feel like I'm not going to listen to you because this is the big doctor. I don't want to make you feel like that, but let's filter this. Really, let's dig down into what was your feeling behind this, right? Because maybe they'll come back and say to you, I didn't know where this was going to go because the last time it started off as something that didn't seem like a big deal, but this is where it ended up. And that's legitimate, right? They feel like that. But if it's somebody who tends to be ready to you step to the left and they're ready to complain, that has to be addressed as well. And we have to triage that because similarly with the doctor or whoever that may be known to be nasty, you can gain a reputation to be known to be the person that makes a big deal out of the smallest of things.
Mhm.
You could be known as the person that cries wolf.
So if I
So,
was that person, if I was that person and you were my lead, either I'm a physician under your direction or you're a department head, and you see that behavior in Carl, how would you pull me aside and say, what would you tell me when I'm a complainer and that's not helping me out? What would you say to me?
yeah. So I definitely would ask questions. I would then acknowledge how you felt, but then I would give you examples. So if your friend did this, or if a family member did this, how would that have felt to you? Do you feel like this would have been a big issue? What was it about this situation that made you feel that way, right? Because let's look at the bigger picture. And I think having comparison to things, if your child, your parent, your significant other, okay, fell to the ground, okay, unconscious, would you look at somebody and say, could you please come over here right now, please? Or would you be like, I need help now. Somebody call 911 now. Like, so you have to be able to put it in context for them.
What a great example. Yeah, I love that example.
Yeah.
Heck, I'm going to flip tracks on us here. Um, a lot of your work revolves around physician wellness.
Yeah.
And I, one of my favorite quotes here, and it's from a doctor, a great surgeon. She said, Carl, if I hear one more suggestion of a yoga class, I am going to just strangle somebody. And she of course wasn't serious about the strangle part, but it's just, please would someone address the issue more than a meditation class or a yoga class, because
Yeah.
it goes far beyond that. So can because we talked in our pre-call about physician wellness, the healthcare community wellness,
Mhm.
and the whole community that surrounds that sub-community of
Yeah.
healthcare. So that was fascinating for me. Talk to us about those different levels of wellness.
Yeah. So one of the big things with physician wellness. And I understand what she's talking about. For me, it's the idea of sitting down for a manicure and pedicure. I get it. Like that's not wellness to me. She doesn't want to hear about another yoga or Pilates class. I mean, those are really good, right? But I get what she's saying. She doesn't want to hear about someone saying to meditate. But the thing I always tell people is look at the underlying thing of what they're saying. And what they're basically saying, even with the manicure and pedicure, is did you take time out for you? Have you dug down? Are you aware of how you're doing, how you're feeling? Are you asking, how am I doing mentally? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing physically? Is there a pain that I've been ignoring because I'm busy and I have to go take care of the 5 patients? I'm a pain doctor and I got to take care of their pain and ignore mine. What it's really asking you to do is to really pause and check into yourself, tune in, because a lot of physicians don't do that. I'm busy. I have a lot of stuff to do. My identity stems around me taking care of other people, right? And in doing so, I may not be taking care of myself. And that's a big part of the wellness. Self-care is healthcare. I tell people that all the time.
Say that again.
Self-care is healthcare, right? So it's really not about the yoga. It's really not about the Pilates, the manicure, the pedicure. It's what are you doing? What works for you? What can recharge you? Do you even know? Right? Do you even know? I have a colleague who told me she knows a doctor, big, beautiful home. Beautiful. Gorgeous pool, one of those pools that you would see, and he was like, I'd never go in that pool. Ever, ever. He when she asked him, "Oh my God, how must it be?" And he had been living there 10 years already. He never goes in the pool. He said he went once when they first got the house. He doesn't have time. How's that taking care of yourself? Now, if you don't care about going in the pool, it's one thing. But what are you doing to take care of yourself? That's really taking care of yourself. So if I get a manicure, it's not because I find that to be self-care. It's probably because I have something to go to and I I want to look apart, right? But, you know, really understanding what your needs are, that's part of your wellness. And a lot of physicians don't. A lot of physicians are not even taking oh my God, this blew my mind. They're not even taking the vacations that are allotted to them. So they could have 4 or 5 weeks of vacation and most of them don't even take 3. Some of them are only taking 1 week. There's 52 weeks in a year, Carl. Some are taking 1 week a year. And even the ones that's taking 2 or 3, there's a great percentage of them that if possible, they take work with them.
Yeah.
Right? So how's that wellness?
So, to our listeners here, self care is healthcare. So, you commit to that, you work with that. Now, talk to us about this wellness of the healthcare community. We
Yeah.
talked about the individual, now about the healthcare community.
Yeah. Whether they like it or not, our physicians and our nurses and they're leaders in the community. People look to them, right? And they look to them to know how to be healthier. And so if you're not showing up as your healthy self, I used to I used to get I was a resident and I was floored by how many pulmonologists that I would be rotating with who just told the patient to stop smoking, right? This is before they were doing more of the understand where they are in the stage of change. They would just say to them, you need to stop smoking. And then when I'm leaving that day, I would see them outside smoking. And I'm just like, what just happened here? Right. And if I could see you, right, the patient, when they walked out the door, could
Yeah.
see you too. Right. But I truly believe let's talk more on that emotional intelligence level. And let's
Mhm.
talk more about just mental wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness. When the medical professionals are well, then it makes for better medical communities,
Mhm.
right? Again, it's that leadership and that shadow. I'm
Mhm.
doing well, I've seen people say I go out and get self-care because my leader encourages it because she does it or he does it.
Mhm.
Okay? And so that's a better community, medical community. And when the medical communities are well, the external communities will be well too.
How
Be-
does that follow? What happens there?
because you're not just speaking it, you're living it and they can see it. They can see that you're living it. They can see in how you talk to them about it that you're living it. It
Mhm.
goes back to don't look like you're checking a box. When somebody smiles and their eyes don't smile, we could tell,
Cool.
right? So, but when you're living it, people can tell. People can tell the difference. When I was on medical leave, and when I was on medical leave when I had cancer, and I don't have cancer now, so don't, I've been cancer free for 5 years this year. Um, People told me when the turnaround started to happen for me, when I was no longer on the edge of that burnout cliff, because I really sat down and I really looked into how did I get here? What happened? It wasn't even the cancer for me. It was I realized how stressed out I was and I was about to burn out. But I wasn't saying anything to anybody about trying to make a transformation, but people told me, my goodness, you smile so much now, right? There's like this energy about you, right? It took a bit, but people start to come to me and tell me
Mhm.
that, you know. Other than the fact that I make a lot of people laugh, but there was something that I was exuding out to people.
Absolutely.
And so that they gained from that. And they're like, I want some of that. I want to do that too.
So the well it trick, there's that ripple effect. You said something though a couple of minutes ago that I want you to address more. And I'm paraphrasing what I heard here, doctor. But whether you like it or not, physician or nurse, you are a leader. And I have so many people, especially bedside nurses or doctors that are just starting. Carl, I'm a worker bee. I'm not a leader. I have no direct reports. I don't have a bottom line. I don't run a P&L. So I'm not a leader. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, and this is where we should have taped it, but I'm going to use it for your community. I'm going to tell them, I'm going to use this example. So, years ago, many years ago, I don't even remember how many years ago, Charles Barkley, because he would get so much backlash for the stuff that he would say, I'm not anybody's role model. I'm not your role model. That's not what I came here to be. And it's like, you may not want to be anybody's role model because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. But like it or not, you are. There are a lot of people that look up to you, Charles, right? It's just the way it is. In the medical community, we're leaders. Okay. People look up to us. People depend on us. People, they're looking for feedback. You know, we say stuff, it makes them think, well, maybe I need to, even if it is, let me go look at that. It makes them think.
Mhm.
Some people take what we say for law, even though I encourage people to do their own investigation. It's just the way it is. But the other thing is, people think of leader as a title, right? And it's an attribute. It's not just a title, it's an attribute.
Go further on that. This is
So
so important.
So there are different things. There are different aspects of us that makes us leaders, and it doesn't have to be everything, right? So maybe I'm really good. Like if you're building something, somebody's very good at doing measurements. They may take the lead on that. Somebody's very good at doing the hammering. Somebody's very good at organizing everybody, right? Now, people would think, well, the organizer is the leader, but the organizer can organize and make sure everybody knows what to do, but doesn't know how to lift a hammer, can't teach anybody else how to use that, doesn't know how to measure, doesn't know. So everybody can, has an attribute if they so choose to really allow it to be shown that makes them a leader. The mere fact that you went to medical school or nursing school and you're coming out and doing this, and these are not easy things. These are not easy things. And think that you're somehow not a leader. And I understand where they're coming from because that's me. I was like, I'm a good background person. I'm a worker bee. I'm a good background person, right? Now I'm not the front person. That was me years ago.
So I want to segue off that because it's like you're reading my notes here. A lot of the doctors that I talk to, especially one right now comes to mind, Carl, I'm just not that type of leader. I'm an introvert. I do well one-on-one, but in front of a group, not so much. So don't ask me to do X, Y, and Z. I'm just an introvert, and I've been an introvert for all my life. So basically, don't ask me to change. What would you say to that introvert? And they truly may be, let me be background. Yet nothing about their role and title says that it can be. How would you address that?
There's people that are in front of the camera and people that are behind the camera. And if you ever watch some of these award shows and they say some names and you're like, who's that? Well, that was the producer handler of the this and the that. And you're like, what? The music score and oh, okay. All right, great. Um, their job was just as important, so much so they're willing to give an award for it. you know, Somebody that is an introvert, I think sometimes people confuse introvert, right? Because that person may be an introvert, they may be more than an introvert, they may have some anxiety around being around people, they may be more shy. Because introverts, all it means is it's introvert extrovert is energy, right? An introvert does not gain energy from being around a lot of people all of the time, right? It actually drains them, whereas an extrovert, give it to me. I want all the energy. I want to be around all the people, right? And so yes, they need time to themselves. They like to do more one-on-one. It doesn't mean that they're not leading. It doesn't, right? Because sometimes that one, I was in academia at one point, and formal academia made me think that I didn't really like academia. But when I left formal academia, and then a year later, students start to shadow me, I was like, I love teaching, right? Right? It was a more condensed, intimate type
Mhm.
of teaching than being in a big academic setting. And I liked that, right? You can still be a leader and be an introvert. It's just energy. It's like where you like to put your energy. Do you have something that you're really good at? You might be the person that knows how to read these reports that no one knows how to read. You're suddenly the person we're going to understand these reports because we don't get it. Right?
Love it. As we wrap up here, Doctor, is there anything that you want to tell our audience that I haven't asked you about yet?
I just, well, first, I want to thank you for inviting me on to your podcast. It's such a joy and a pleasure to talk to you. I would tell everybody to really tune in, become aware of all of you, right? A lot of times when we talk about wellness and well-being, people automatically think nutrition and exercise. And that is super important. But there's more to you than just nutrition and exercise. Okay? I would say look at how you are doing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, right? And I noticed I didn't say religious, I said spiritually, right? Um, Even financially, it all goes into our wellness. And so, I would implore people to start to be more self-aware, tune in. We can't address what we don't acknowledge. And, just really ask for help, because that's the other piece. Get vulnerable and be willing to ask for help and be open enough to accept help. The other thing I would say is, if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as Judy Wright MD. I am on Instagram as Judy Wright MD. And you could go to my website, wellnesswithdrjudy.com.
You you're just reading ahead of me on my notes because my next was how can we connect with you, and you just but you said something, and I know I'm wrapping up here, but you just said something. You can't change what you're not aware of. Is that what?
Yeah, you can't address what you don't acknowledge.
Bingo. Okay. Been one of the faster hours of my life. Thank you for being on with me today. This has
Thank
been great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure to have you. And to our listeners, please take time. This is a reflective podcast. So take time when you're not multitasking to go through and take some notes. And again, reach out to Dr. Wright if that fits for you. Thanks for being with us today.